There is nothing more important than being in God's will. We shouldn't follow our own desires if they put us in a place of disobedience to God. Yeah, but I really want this. Yes, it's the longing of my heart. I've desired this for so long. 22 years I've wanted this. Yeah, but will it put you in the place of disobedience? Is it God's will for you? Is it outside of God's will? And so back now in chapter 46, God reassures Jacob by saying, I'm the God of your father. I know what I said to your father Isaac about Egypt. Don't be afraid to go down to Egypt. You know, the most repeated statement that God makes in the Bible, don't be afraid. What does that tell us? We're fearful, aren't we? We're easily afraid. God says, don't be afraid. And then he says, I will make of you a great nation there, repeating the promise that he made to Abraham and then to Isaac. In other words, the covenant will still be in effect in Egypt. I'll keep my covenant with you even though you're going down to Egypt. God's plan all along was to make a great nation of Israel in the land of Egypt, and then just as he says, and then bring them back up into the land of Canaan as a nation. Now right now, at this point, Israel is a family. They're not a nation, and they're not even really a very large family. You look over in verse 27, Jacob's entire family numbers only 70 people. Abraham came into the land more than 200 years before, and God told Abraham, I'm going to make of you a great nation. Your descendants are going to be like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. And 200 years later, there's only 70 people in the family. That's not much. I counted. I have a lot of brothers and sisters, and just in my immediate family, brothers, sisters, their spouses, their kids, there's 57 people in my family. And so that's not many. And we know that God's going to take like another 400 years to finally make them into a great nation. Listen, the promises of God are trustworthy. But sometimes the timing of God is slower than we would like. Have you noticed that? Right? That he's not on your schedule or my schedule. He's kind of on his own schedule. And so a small family will go down to Egypt, and while they're in Egypt, God will make them a great nation there, and then God will bring them back out of Egypt. If you turn with me over to Exodus chapter 1, because this is really setting the stage for the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 1, it says, now, in verse 1, now these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. Each man in his household came with Jacob, and it lists the names there of his sons in verses 2 through 4. Verse 5 says, and all those who were descendants of Jacob were 70 persons, for Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, all his brothers, and all that generation. But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them, the land of Egypt. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph, and he said to his people, look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen in the event of war that they also join our enemies and fight against us, so go up out of the land. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were in dread of the children of Israel. So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage and mortar and brick and all manner of service in the field. All their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. So they were enslaved in Egypt because they grew into this great nation, because they multiplied, which will lead to God delivering them out of their bondage in Egypt. So it's setting the stage really for the Exodus. Now back in Genesis 46, Verse 3, God says, I'll make of you a great nation there. I'll go down with you to Egypt. I'll be with you in Egypt. That's always God's answer to our fears, that He's with us. Don't be afraid. I'm with you. Fear not. I'll be with you. His presence in our lives is always His answer to our fears. God says, I'll go with you to Egypt. I'm not going to send you down there alone. To me, all right, like that's all I need to hear. You know, you can do anything if God's with you, so let's go kind of thing. He's with me, I'm in. Then God says, I will bring you up again to Canaan. That's going to be more than 400 years after they went down to Egypt. And so Egypt's not going to be their permanent home, it's temporary. And God will bring them back to the land of Canaan. And He says, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes, meaning Joseph will be present with you until the day you die. This must have been comforting for Jacob to hear that, to know that he's going to be reunited with his son and that his son will be with him until the day of his death. And so now that God has spoken and has given Jacob the green light to go to Egypt, he continues his journey in verse 5. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones and their wives, in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. And so they took their livestock and their goods, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and they went to Egypt. Jacob and all his descendants with him, his sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. Now, when I read this, I picture the Beverly Hillbillies. You know, with Jed like loading up the truck and moving to Beverly. You know, here's Jake loading up the carts and moving down to Egypt kind of thing. So they head down to Egypt. His whole entire family with him. Wouldn't that be great to have all of your kids and grandkids move with you wherever you move? That's a wonderful thing. And now these were the names of the children of Israel, Jacob and his sons, who went to Egypt. And then in verses 8 to 25, we have a list of the names of Jacob's family members who went down to Egypt. And again, we're not going to read through all these names together,